Welcome to Sacred Realms. It's a great day in Hyrule, y'all. Welcome to Sacred Realms, a Zelda Retrospective Podcast. I'm your host, Lyndon Willoughby, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Willoughby, for the final time in Season 11 of Sacred Realms. How you doing, Matt?
I'm great. Lyndon, how many Zelda games have we played now?
What did we figure out last week? 12?
Yeah, there you go.
Cool.
Cool. Okay.
Look, I'm ashamed of what happened in last week's episode. And I just want everyone to know that I admit full responsibility. Like, my poor academic performance in school has not set me up for success in life in the field of mathematics. So,
I mean, Lyndon, all you had to do was go down a page and count. This wasn't even math. You weren't adding or subtracting, but
it's important that everyone remember that I'm good at a lot of things. All right.
But counting and math are not either of those things.
Never claimed that they were.
There you go.
We don't love Lyndon for his academic acumen.
That's fair.
If you did, then I would have questions.
Trust me, we don't.
I would really need to dig into that.
That is not your most shining quality, for sure.
Well, this seems like as good a time as any to introduce our guest of the evening. You know him, you love him. He comes around at the end of every season to help us rank and recap the game that we just got done playing, and he was also around for some of the lowest points of my academic performance in life.
I can attest.
The detective. How you doing, Mike?
I'm fantastic. Happy to be back.
Always happy to be
Always happy to have you back. You know what? I have to apologize to you for something.
Okay.
I think that you have been wrapping yourself up in a warm blanket of safety, in the thought that you would not be required to play Spirit Tracks with us next season and participate in another rank and recap.
I'm firmly in that safety blanket.
I am here to rip that blanket right off of your nubile body and let you know that we have successfully tracked down a copy of the game for you, sir.
And that means I have to play it?
It does.
It does. Your contract stipulates that you will rank and recap every Zelda game except for Zelda 2. It does not stipulate Spirit Tracks.
What contract?
We wrote it that one night when you were, feeling real good.
It's
tracks.
I was going to say, you really should ask less questions right now. Yeah,
I have enough missed days. It's not unlikely that there's a contract somewhere.
We did give you the stipulation out on Zelda 2, but not on Spirit Tracks.
I appreciate that, and I'm also glad my contract's not for something more nefarious than playing Spirit Tracks, because it easily could be.
That you know of. Well, we'll have to read the bylaws later.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll have to get into subsections A, B, and C at a later date. I think that they will shock and alarm you.
C is pretty par for the course. It's mostly cuddling and caresses. But
exactly.
A and B are kind of out there.
Head pats. Yeah, exactly. Mike, but, obviously we're not talking about Spirit Tracks yet. We've got another week or two on that before you have to even start worrying about it. What we are here to talk about is a game that we almost assuredly had a lot more fun with than we're going to have with Spirit Tracks, which was the Minish cap. And that's maybe unfair to Spirit Tracks right off the bat because we haven't played it yet. But it feels like a pretty safe bet given just how much I think we all freaking enjoyed this game, right?
Oh, yeah. I really had a good time with this game.
Yeah. Samesies, Matt?
Yeah, definitely samesies. I didn't feel the need to repeat that, as I've said at every episode on this season. So, yes.
Fair enough. Of course, the reasons that we enjoyed it and the extent to which we enjoyed it versus other games on our list is something that we're going to break down on this show tonight, and it's going to be a really fun time. Mike, just a real quick question for you before we get into the actual discussion, the aforementioned breaking down of those points. How'd you feel about the end of the game?
I felt really positive about the end of the game. So obviously we've played a lot of Zelda at this point in pretty rapid succession. And so I'm not going to say anything's become necessarily stale, but we've definitely kind of gotten the Zelda formula down, right? And so playing this game, I was wondering what they would bring to make it a little different or spice it up a little bit. going from the Wind Temple, essentially, or the Sky Temple, into, I'm going to blank on the actual name of that place, but into the Dark Hyrule Castle was pretty fun. I think we talked the last time I was on about how you kind of get trapped if you go directly to the castle. I did find out that you can leave later in the castle.
But it's completely understandable why at the time you thought that was the case.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I did make it back out, go do a few other side questy things just for fun. And then I went back in with a bunch of milk.
Get that milk, boy. Drink on milk.
Yes, I had plenty of milk. Went back in. I thought the temple was good. Didn't quite overstay its welcome. I liked fighting all the Dark Nucks. And I felt like those were pretty interesting fights. They did get a little repetitive on like the third or fourth tower for me.
Yeah, it was definitely a gauntlet of Nuck.
I would have enjoyed like a gauntlet of Nuck. Pretty sure I've seen that on a video store shelf somewhere.
They're dark nuts. I get confused because we have a dark Nuck in our community.
Yeah,
right?
nut with a T and UT.
Oh no. Well, that's even worse. It was a gauntlet of nut.
Yeah, that's bad. That's NSFW.
Yeah. No, I would have used a little less nut. More if we could. You set me up. If we could have like one of like a different but still pretty virile bad guy in each of the towers, I think that would have been a fun change. But that's really nitpicky of me.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, obviously we haven't had that big of a gap since you were on last time, right? But we did just have the ending and the closing of the game. Did you feel like the ending of the story was satisfying?
I did. I don't know if I was expecting more. Really, I didn't have a whole lot of expectations other than that we would save Zelda, things would be put right, and the bad guy would go away. That's kind of the meta for Zelda at this point. And yes, so you do save Zelda. I really liked the 3-part boss fight. I thought that was a fun little throw in. And I was honestly kind of sweating it because someone had told me, I don't remember if it was Matt, that it was going to be a 3-parter. Or I knew that somewhere, and I thought they were all 3 going to be back to back. I had no fairies left and like 3 hearts at the very end of the second phase, and I'm like, this is going to be bad. But then they do give you a little chance to go to fill it back up. Not that I needed it, but the boss fight was fun. It wasn't super challenging, but enough to kind of make it interesting. Mm-hmm. The false, hey, I saved Zelda with the stupid time deal to try and get to Vati before he had the 3rd chime.
Did you run out of time?
Twice.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think it was just I was choosing the slowest methods to fight those enemies that I could. Like I was bombing the Dark Nuts.
Yeah.
The guy with the giant flail, I was doing the whole like shield block him, run up, cut him twice.
Here's a fun thing about that guy. You could just run straight past him.
Yeah, you don't even have to fight him.
The door's open. Yeah.
Well, I'm about to leave this goober here where he might do additional damage.
Well, that's fair.
I think that's the smart way to play it. Yeah.
So yeah, I took out Goober. I mean, what if he walked in, you're fighting the boss, and he just like chain F's you in the back?
Mike's life motto is no goober shall survive.
So no, I did take him out, did the other part. So I ran out of time just barely twice on the Dark Nut fight. Then I finally got it. That wasn't too much of an off-put for me. But then going in and you had that last final fight where you saved Zelda, but then you get dropped into that needing to use the Minish size was really kind of fun for the end of the game. And then I like that Eslo, appears and has that talk with you, and he kind of seems like he's got some emotional attachment, which was cool. I don't feel like he was in my top 2. He may be like a honorable mention or 3 as far as like especially 2D companion character.
He's definitely a top 5 overall.
Yeah, I think that's probably safe. But I did like that they tried to throw some emotions in there at the end, and that it kind of has a wholesome story, and that Zelda, again, kind of gets to assert something. Like it's her purity and goodwill that restores the kingdom, and that kind of gives you an impetus for why I spent all this time trying to save her.
Right, yeah.
So no, I thought it was well played. Nothing astounding, but not a disappointment.
Okay, excellent. I think where we came away from it last week was that the plot at the end of the day, while fun enough as set dressing was not maybe the thing that was causing us to love the ending of the game as much as we did. We really liked the dungeon. We really liked the Vati fight. It was all it was all big fun. So yeah. But some of these are elements that we're going to break down in this discussion this week. Can't wait to get into it. Before we do that, you know what we have to do, Matt?
Tequila bit.
Whiskey bit.
Well, it's usually whiskey bit, yeah.
This week is not whiskey bit.
This week we're doing something a little different. It's tequila bit.
Yay!
I did not have a whiskey bit worthy whiskey to pull off the shelf tonight, and so we're having some agave spirits instead. This is the point in the episode where if I can find an MP3 for it, I'm going to cut this little ditty in.
That's beautiful.
These mariachis all did a shot of tequila in the video before starting to play, by the way.
Oh, that's even better.
And I'm going to revisit this YouTube channel. It's Mariachi Entertainment System. It seems like they have mariachi covers of a lot of Zelda themes. So
You should put that on the wedding playlist, Lyndon.
Oh my God.
I'm not even kidding.
I will absolutely try. And if I can find an MP3, then I'll cut
I want
it
a
in here.
salsa to Zelda at your wedding.
Please do. That would be so funny.
Anyway.
Marilyn would just roll her eyes, but it would be great.
It's gonna be like 6 nerds on the dance floor.
Dude, honestly, that's what we go for, though, is the
Yes.
eye roll. That is our duty as husbands.
That's when you know you've
the
hit
eye
it,
roll.
yeah.
It's currency, really. Like I save those up. I put them in a bank. Like they make me proud. You know, I've worked hard for those eye rolls.
You should be proud.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, this is El Padrino de mi Tierra. It's a tequila blanco. My brother-in-law got it for me for Christmas. It is not a high-dollar tequila, but it has very good reviews online. I've had a sip of it before, and I find it equally good for sippage and for the mixing of drinks. So, anyway, here is to the noble beverage, which is tequila. Big fans over here. We don't do it a lot, but when we do, we're happy about it.
Yeah.
Salud!
Salud. It's quite tasty. Very vanilla.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Delicious.
Well, you know, for a Blanco, you can, a lot of times I found you can get too far into like spicy, kind of pepper, like very harsh flavors, which is why a lot of people use Blanco as a mixer instead of a sipper. But yeah, you're right. This one does have a little bit of vanilla to it. I think that it's, if I looked this up earlier, I feel like it's distilled extra time in the oak barrels versus what Blanco tequila normally is, and that's probably where you're getting a lot of that flavor. But it goes down easy, and I am not regretting my decision at all. I think
Nice and smooth, not harsh at all.
this was a good pick. All right, y'all. Well, without further ado, let's get into housekeeping and then talk about this game that we just finished playing. If you didn't know, Sacred Realms is a weekly re-examination of The Legend of Zelda, one little slice at a time. Sacred Realms drops every Wednesday and is available on all major podcast networks. Every week, we play a new section of a Zelda game, and then we sit down here to talk and to drop our hot takes. If that sounds fun to you, please head over to Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to leave us a review. 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated, and they have a chance to get a shout out here on the show. If you want more Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod and get access to our Discord channel, listener mail, vote on what game we play next, just got done doing that, and much more. The game that we voted on, as earlier teased, is The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. We'll be playing that in Season 12 of the pod. Additionally, one of the benefits that Master Sword patrons and above get is that we read their names every week here on the show. Those legendary individuals are Brandon Shrikewill, Joseph Nintendo, Adam Sakura Sky, Art, Jeremy, Dante 2, Tom, Andy, Billy, Connor, Rachel, Shepherd Street, Matthew, Chris, Daniel, Fallout 907, Kelso, Chris, Tiffany the Star, Patrice, Stephanie, Darknuck, Il Maestro himself, who's cooking up something pretty special for our Spirit Track season, Brian, George, Mike, Dylan, Lennon, Kolku, Rowan, Josh, Nick, Dante 1, Gep, Brittany, Davey, Haru, the Mighty, Derek, Albert, Mark, Andy, Cameron, Ben, Daniel, Nick D_TV, Hyrule Interviews, aka Max Nichols, Garrett, and Drew. These are the most legendary of individuals.
Would you fight a giant eye with one of them any day of the week?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, at the very least with probably Josh and Max, because that sounds like a video gamey-ass scenario, and I feel like their knowledge combined would probably be a boon to me in that situation.
No doubt.
And if we added your raw combat prowess to the party.
That makes a pretty good RPG party right there.
Yeah, exactly. And then Matt, what do you feel like you bring to the table?
I mean, general badassery and bossiness. I could tell everybody what to do.
I would have said he could be
You
like.
could tell that big eye to just go right off.
I feel like he'd be
Yes.
in charge of our inventory. Like he would cook the meals.
Oh, the quartermaster.
Yeah, he'd be our quartermaster.
I feel like I'm way more valuable than quartermaster, but I could take quartermaster on as an additional responsibility.
Yeah, I like
So
that.
I'm very good
Okay.
at that.
Man, you need to be careful. Your producer is going to hear that you have more bandwidth than you've been assigned for.
I
You're gonna
have
get loaded
told
with
you
all kinds.
I have told you that I have more bandwidth than what you've assigned me, and you have continued to not use that, Mr. Producer, sir.
Gatsby, producer. Matt says he's got room for a little more. Hi, buddy. Hi, buddy. We're back in the courtyard tonight, which means the pub producer's out here with us.
Yay.
It's a good time. It feels fantastic. It feels so good.
Linda, we do have a new 5-star review.
A new 5-star
if you wanted
review?
to,
That
throw
rhymes.
that in here.
Yeah.
It does, sort of. Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. Hold on. There we go. All right. This one is from Zelda Harbinger, and they say, for someone who grew up on The Legend of Zelda, I find this show with so many nostalgic moments from the games. The detail that this show puts in each episode makes me love The Legend of Zelda even more. Thank you, guys. And, you know, if we can increase somebody's love of The Legend of Zelda, that's a win in my book.
I completely 100% agree. And that's reminding me, we got a message. Do you remember we got a Patreon message a few weeks ago from a listener who listens exclusively on Spotify and is unable to leave a 5-star review, but wrote one in anyway and said that that would be the medium in which they would choose to submit it. This 5-star review comes from Emily Rhodes, who has a profession that I think we're all going to be very admiring of. Emily says, hello, listener since season 1 here, so thanks for the great content. Just wanted to shout out a couple of things. I listen on Spotify, so can't write a review, so consider this my 5-star review. That includes being a big fan of Whiskey Bit. I work in the Scotch whiskey industry. Just listened to Minish Cap Chapter 2, so wanted to shout out Lyndon's excellent knowledge of Japanese whiskey standards. Fun fact, the reasons there are so many similarities between Scotch whiskey and Japanese whiskey is because the first whiskey distiller in Japan learned the skill in Scotland and was married to a Scot. So he brought that style back with him. I'm glad somebody finally corrected Matt on Isla, but to give credit where credit is due, his pronunciation of Bruichladdich wasn't bad, and that catches Bruichladdich wasn't bad. There you go. And catches a lot of people out. Also, my dog is called Gatsby, so he likes it when your Gatsby makes an appearance. Although he does get a bit confused. Thanks again and keep it up.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Emily. And I further clarified, I was wondering, did she work for a specific distillery or whatnot? She actually worked for the Scotch Whiskey Association, which handles standards, I think, for the entire umbrella of Scotch whiskey.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
That's a really cool job.
I know. So anyway, thank you so much, Emily. We appreciate you writing in, and we love that people love Whiskey Bit. We're big fans of it ourselves, even when we don't observe it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this rank and recap episode. Of course, this is the section that replaces the Sacred Realms rundown on the weeks where we have ranks and recaps. It is a 6-part analysis of the game that we just got finished playing, talking about high points, low points, and at the very end of it, we will rank Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap against the other games that we have played so far in the series. Just as a reminder to everybody, that ranking currently stands as thus. Number 11, The Adventure of Link. Number 10, Phantom Hourglass. Number 9, The Legend of Zelda. Number 8, Twilight Princess. Number 7, A Link to the Past. Number 6, A Link Between Worlds. Number 5, Link's Awakening. Number 4, The Wind Waker. Number 3, Skyward Sword. Number 2, Ocarina of Time. And number 1, Breath of the Wild. And because we always forget to do this, I'm going to say it again here. Additionally, we've been doing a final dungeon ranking, and that ranking currently stands at number 11, Phantom Hourglass, number 10, Link's Awakening, number 9, The Adventure of Link, number 8, Ocarina of Time, number 7, Twilight Princess, number 6, The Legend of Zelda, number 5, Skyward Sword, number 4, The Wind Waker, number 3, A Link to the Past, number 2, A Link Between Worlds, and number 1, Hyrule Castle from Breath of the Wild. Part 1 of the Sacred Realms recap is the plot, in which we discuss our thoughts on the overall story that the Minish Cap told, breaking down its main characters, and just talking about how we feel the plot resolved at the end of the game. So, Matt, I'm going to send it over to you first. Do you feel that the story of the Minish Cap was one that is higher up in the ranks of Zelda games that we played so far? Do you feel like it left you wanting for more? Was it somewhere in the middle of those two? Give us your off the cuff thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was good. It wasn't like great. It wasn't. It doesn't like stand out as far as plots go. I think a lot of that comes from being a very different story from most other Zelda games. There's no Master Sword, there's no Triforce, there's no Ganon or Ganondorf, which honestly is not a bad thing. It's just very different. So I think that this game having unique lore surrounding basically every aspect of it was an interesting choice, one that I think benefits it in some ways and doesn't benefit it in others. The main ways that it doesn't benefit is that it doesn't feel like there's a depth to this story and the lore like there is for other Zelda games. It's harder to draw connective lines and connective tissues to other Zelda games. It's harder for those echoes that you're so fond of. It's hard for direct lines of sameness that I'm fond of. So it's a very standalone story outside of the Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures, which neither of us have played. So, I think that is...
And which most people haven't played.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that is all true. Also, I do think that it's kind of a pretty generic story as far as bad guy wants big power to take over the world. And that's just kind of pretty normal. The stuff regarding the Minish and how they interact with the world and the ways in which they are a part of the story, I think are probably some of the highlights for the uniqueness of the story. Just the thought that, hey, there's these little tiny fairy-like creatures that live in Hyrule and literally live to like make people's lives better. Like that's all pretty cool. And they have their own magic. The crafting of the Four Sword, I think would be a lot cooler if we had an emotional connection to the Four Sword the way that we do to the Master Sword.
Yeah.
Because it's very much, crafting the Master Sword and Skyward Sword. But obviously, this is the Four Sword. So I think it really lands kind of in the middle for me of just like, yeah, it's a good story, but it doesn't like, the story itself doesn't blow me away. And it doesn't like make me want to go read a manga about the story. Like I want to read the manga about Twilight Princess because I feel like the story of the Twilight and Zant and the war of Twilight and Hyrule sounds pretty cool. Like,
sure. Yeah.
But this doesn't capture me that way. But it's not like, I don't know, it's not like Adventure of Link, which basically has no story, or Legend of Zelda, which basically has no story. And, that's just true of the games in which the time in which they were made. So, yeah, I would say it's pretty firmly in the middle.
Okay, fair enough. Mike.
So before I jump into it, can you remind me where this falls on the when it was made of everything?
This was in 2004.
Yeah.
Which was after Wind Waker.
Before Twilight Princess.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. No, and that does help. So I agree with Matt on a few of the points. I feel like if we're splitting this into there's like the upper echelon, high tier of story, and then just kind of like the what story, this is above middle for me.
Okay.
I do think that I thought it was a positive overall that it didn't follow a lot of the same beats we're used to for the Zelda story. Because I kind of have gotten a little bogged down in somehow Ganon returns or Ganondorf.
I'm super glad we don't have Ganon in this game.
No, if he would have come in and usurped Vati to be in the big bad, I would have just probably stopped playing this game. No, I wouldn't have.
Especially after Twilight Princess.
I know, but no, so I mean, like you've got kind of a one-off, completely separate, but also really, I thought, entertaining story.
Yeah.
It's very high fantasy. Like this is something I could see them dropping into for like a D&D campaign or like a completely separate fantasy game.
Yeah.
Where, okay, I'm a youth from a town and I'm going to town to, go see what the big city's like.
Yeah.
And, I hear about these fairy people that brought a magical sword years and years ago. And then this kicks off with a bad guy just popping up.
Yeah.
Like it kind of reminds me a little bit in some ways of like Majora's Mask. Like you get there and all of a sudden Skull Kid's a thing. And you're like, oh, what's going on with Skull Kid? Like I wanted to know more about Vati and how he got his power. And you kind of get that filtered to you through Eslo as the story goes, which I thought's cool.
Yeah.
So it gets you a little bit more invested in Vati. He doesn't have a whole lot of depth as a villain. I mean, he's pretty much, he wanted more power. got a magic hat. Now he's got more power, and now he wants more power.
Yeah.
So kind of like the downfall, or how most bad guys end up being portrayed is like it's never enough for them. They just keep going for the sake of going. But I loved the Minish. I think that the only thing I would have liked to see is maybe some carryover of the Minish in future games, like a nod to the small people that we don't see, or somehow having them turn into the fairies, from depending on timeline wise from some of the other games.
Or even the Kokiri.
Yeah, have them be an iteration
and
of
then
something.
the Koroks later, like establishing them as part of that lineage kind of feels... Yeah.
That's cool. That could be a headcanon.
Yeah.
But no, I liked the Minish. I loved the miniature environments. Like, I thought that was such a cool detail. And I know we're talking about the plot, but it played into the plot for me.
No, that belongs here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you've got all this cool detail about the Minish miniature world, how they have to navigate like the little people from the borrowers, to kind of get around homes and stuff.
Right.
And so I thought that was super cool the whole time. I could have left the joining of the Kinstone pieces. I was burnt out on that pretty quickly, but the Sky City with its smaller group of denizens and floating on the clouds, that was a cool narrative point. The fact that it's completely separate from the Demise kind of canon was interesting for me.
Right.
So I overall liked the plot. Like Matt said, it's not like super plot deep. We're kind of a surface. There is bad guy. Here's kind of why bad guy is. Here's some kind of cool narrative beats, the end. But that was enough for me in a 2D Zelda game.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. I think I'm about where both of y'all are at as well. To me, this is definitely somewhere above middle, just in terms of story without necessarily breaking into top fives or so. And there's a few different reasons for that. I think one of the reasons that I do enjoy it so much and that it is so endearing is, again, talking about the Minish, the Picori, right? One of the things that this game has always had in its favor was this wonderful doubling of the world, right? And this feeling of a version of Hyrule that's inhabited by two separate civilizations, and like being able to see the evidence of the Minish as you're just kind of like walking around, right? Like that was always a very strong concept, and I think it remained that way throughout the entire game. I like the Minish a lot. I like the Minish a lot as a species in Zelda, right? I thought that they had a lot of fun personality. Mike, you've already talked about the fun miniature sections and everything. Just from an art direction standpoint, I still think that all of that is some of the best work that's ever been done. In any Zelda game, much less a top-down Zelda game, when you get zoomed into those little areas where you're surrounded by like leaves and acorns and stuff, and that sense of scale is really great, especially in the dungeons where you're Minish-sized, right? Deepwood Shrine specifically, right? Areas like that giant spinny barrel in the middle, right? It's all really fun. I will say that to me, the connection of the story to the Minish, aside from the way in which it involved Vati and Eslo as two of the main characters in their Minish, it seems like the Minish society had less to do with the story the further that it went, right? We never really got another Minish civilization, like another Minish town or whatever, to visit after the one in Minish Woods. Right. And I wish that we had another one. I know that half of the dungeons were Minish-sized Link and half of them were large Link. But to be honest, the Temple of Droplets, even though you were Minish-sized, I would have liked to have seen like a lakeside town of the Minish over in Lake Hylia. That was
where they're like fishing and they're going around on leaves instead of boats.
Right. I would have liked to have seen something like that in connection to the Temple of Droplets, the way that the Forest Minish were to Deepwood Shrine. So while I think that that's a really cool plot device and it's very charming and I enjoyed it a lot, I could have used a little bit more commitment to that bit as the game sort of went on. And honestly, it really feels like the further that you get into the game, we start getting away from shrinking Link being in small environments, and it starts getting replaced by the mechanics that come along with duplicating yourself with the Picori blade and the Four Sword, right? Those start to become the main thing that you're dealing with in the game. So But even that in and of itself is a really fun plot mechanic. It's a really fun gameplay mechanic. It's very unique for the Zelda series. And I think that it's leveraged in a very fun and interesting way. I don't know. I think that this version of Hyrule to me is a really charming and happy and endearing one that I don't have a ton of emotional attachment to, just because like Matt was saying earlier, we're not having those direct connections to other Zeldas that we care about that are bringing in a little bit of emotional investment for me in other games, right? But it's still great for what it is. I love the cast of characters that this game has. When we talk about plot in Zelda games, a lot of times, whether it has a good one or a bad one, heavily involves the extraneous characters that we have around Link and his companion and the villain and whatnot. And Minish Cap has got, even if there aren't too many deep emotional side quests that are associated with this large cast of characters, we have a ton of named characters. Mm-hmm. They all have a lot of different quirky personalities. And it's just fun. It's there for you to enjoy if that's something that you like in a Zelda game. And I thought that was a real strength of the Minish Cap.
Yeah, I agree. I think the side characters are amazing. I think the world is super charming, like you said. I think the art style, the direction, the design, I think all of it really works together to create a unique space that complements the game in such a real way that elevates the game even beyond its extraordinary general layout and gameplay. Like it's a really, really great place in which to stage this adventure.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I have a question real quick, and in a second we're going to get into specific discussions about our main characters, Vati, what have you, our Z targeting of the game, right? One thing that we talked about early on this season, and then we had another follow-up discussion about Max with it in more specific detail, was the fact that we had this feeling as we were playing that it was perceptible that this was a Zelda game that had not been created by Nintendo. And that was something that we had not been painting in either a positive or a negative light, right? It's not like we were over here thinking that like, oh, Minish Cap was made by the B team, right? You never really got that impression, but it was just different. For certain perceptible reasons.
And a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Do you both feel that feeling carried throughout the entirety of the game?
That it was from a different studio?
Yeah.
Yes, but I'm not going to say that in a negative light. So if I was another team, not the B team, but another team, and they said, here's your shot at Zelda, and we workshopped some cool ideas, we thought, hey, these have not been done yet, but let's try them. The kinstones, whether you like them or hate them, the shrinking and growing for the Minish, the duplication for the puzzles and world traversal. I mean, all these things are things that are pretty unique and new to this Zelda, and at least from my experience. So I think those are cool things that a team trying to make their mark did, and I think that was good for them. Mm-hmm. And I think that in a lot of ways it hit, in some ways it missed. But if you miss 100% of the shots, you don't take.
Okay, Wayne Gretzky. Yeah. Matt, how about you? Do you feel like this game being developed by a studio other than Nintendo was a boon or a detractor from your experience with the Minish Cap?
I would say overall it's a boon. Mostly because now that this is our 12th Zelda game in the last 3 years almost that we've played.
Yeah.
It was kind of refreshing, right? Like it was refreshing to be a little bit different. And Nintendo is good at shaking up the base gimmick of Zelda games, but the formula remains pretty same from Link to the Past through Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
The formula is pretty samey. Not that that's a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. Like, I'm saying all of this as statements of facts, not statements of like or dislike. But with Minish Cap coming in and just being ever so slightly different, slightly enough that you feel it, but not majorly enough that you go, whoa, this feels weird. It struck that good balance of different but not off-putting. Mm-hmm. And in, I would say, the majority of ways, that was very positive for this game. I think it worked well within the game that they designed. I think if you tried to do some of these things within a Nintendo-designed Zelda game, like, man, I'm thinking about if you put Kinstones in Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time, it would not work. It just wouldn't. And I think if you did... I don't know, let's say the more high fantasy fairy tale feel that doesn't work super well in a lot of the Nintendo made Zelda games. It works in some of them, but the way that Capcom was able to come in, be true to Zelda as a game series, but put their own unique spin on it through music, aesthetics, some game design choices, difference in items, how those items functioned, totally new items in some ways, was really, really good. And they really did a good job of creating a unique identity that was still respectful to the template, and it worked really well.
Yeah, I think for me, where I come down on this is that I agree with you, Matt. I think that it's a net positive for this game. For somebody who's played as many Zelda games as we have, being able to pick up on these little differences when they're done well does make it feel like a refreshing experience, which I really appreciated the whole way through. There are some things that I could identify as being like, Nintendo usually has a little bit of a better handle on this particular concept or whatever. But those were few and far between, and I feel like the interesting differences that were present were most often very endearing, and I appreciated them very much. And for what it's worth, I think as a main gimmick for the game, remembering that this game has not only one but two, right? You've got shrinking and duplication.
Yep.
Right. I think that both of those are actually stronger ideas and mechanics with a more fun fiction to them than a lot of the primary gimmicks that Nintendo incorporates into some of their mainline games.
Phantom Hourglass.
You're
well,
right.
but even Twilight Princess, Wolf Link is not as good as this.
Fun. No, I totally agree.
I think those are fair. And like you said, the template, like if they're given a template saying, hey, you need to follow this to a certain extent, we still got some really some banger dungeons.
Yeah.
I mean, we got some good dungeons. They implemented their own, the shrinking with that template. And I thought that was, like you said, it might have tapered off, but there was some good effect with the shrinking dungeons. And that the feeling of space in a couple of them felt really good. But they did. I mean, you have Zelda. You have a king of Hyrule. You have a big bad who is trying to take over the world, and pieces of the Triforce or the light are important to the end game. And so I think that they kept...
And Sacred Sword.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like you have hallmarks still. It's just not all the hallmarks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, the thing is, a lot of these different ingredients, Matt was talking earlier about how, and we were all agreeing that this game does feel disconnected from a lore standpoint than most of the rest of the Zelda series, right? Sometimes in jarring ways, right? Like last week we were talking about a lot of the concepts that are the crux of the plot of Minish Cap, right? Like it's not the Triforce, it's the Light Force. It's like you don't wish on the Triforce, you have this magical wishing cap, right? You had the hero that came from the sky, and that was not Skyward Sword Link, but it was just some other Link that we've never seen before. And like we're skirting a lot of similar concepts. We have a sacred sword that's not the Master Sword, right? We're skirting a lot of concepts that could feel like ripoffs of, I want to say, OG Zelda. Like the primary Nintendo developed Zelda series. But they don't feel like ripoffs. And they're interesting enough on their own to where my big takeaway from Minish Cap from a plot standpoint was I wish that this had been a lore, like a segment of the Zelda lore that had been allowed to develop further into more games, right? Like the Dynasty of the Four Sword, I think deserved to carry forward into more, more traditional Zelda games, right?
Yeah.
Not Four Swords Adventures,
which were actually made prior to Minish Cap anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But mainline Zelda games, I think, would have been in a good spot to be able to take some of these story points and continue them forward, and to find ways to insert them into the timeline, right?
And so, now that we're in the age of Breath of the Wild and its ilk, I mean, I don't know when we're going to get another 2D Zelda, if for a long time or ever, but I would love to see a continuation of the Minish Cap timeline or style, whatever we want to call it, in another 2D.
Yeah.
I think that would be a fun way to go. But I think overall good for Capcom for kind of trying to make their own. And I also wonder if there was any, I mean, I know it's all kind of under that Nintendo umbrella, but I wonder if there was any direction of, hey, don't use the Master Sword, like that's ours, or don't use this.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to talk to Max or someone who might have that in.
Yeah. Well, specifically to the Master Sword, and I know you were saying more generally, you just use the Master Sword as an example, but specifically to the Master Sword, the Force Sword was going to be the Master Sword up until like 2 or 3 months before the game actually released. So I think that it's very possible Zelda did something, or Nintendo did something like that, which is don't use the Triforce or something like that. But it does make me curious what constraints were put on Capcom. And this brings me back to a question that I see floating around social media quite a lot, actually, is if you were to have one other studio design a Zelda game other than Nintendo, who would it be? And those questions...
Bungie.
Well, no, definitely not. Those questions always make me laugh because I'm like, Capcom, obviously, they've already done it 3 times, and at least one of those games was a freaking banger. So, like, why are we asking this question? We know the answer.
Did we ever get Link in a Street Fighter game, though?
We got him in a Soul Calibur game.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Soul Calibur 2 for the GameCube.
I played that. Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Each Soul Calibur 2 on their unique platform got a unique fighter. Xbox got Spawn, which was really cool. He had some crazy powerful attacks.
Spawn was awesome.
I don't remember who PlayStation was. I think it was Snake.
It was Hayachi from Tekken.
Okay, yeah. And then GameCube got Link, which was super cool. When I got a GameCube, when I was actually, I think I was a sophomore in college, I found one at a used game store or something for a reasonable price. Mm-hmm. I bought it, and that was the first game I bought was Soul Calibur 2 for the GameCube because I was like, I want to play as Link, and it was great. And the really cool thing, this is a total tangent, but it's a fun one.
Yes.
Really cool thing about Soul Calibur 2 was it had like a single player story mode where you could go through and like get different gear for your character, and you could play as any character, and it would be their own story. For Link, you could get a bunch of different swords and shields, including the Razor Sword, the Gilded Sword, the Mirror Shield from Ocarina of Time, the Mirror Shield from Majora's Mask. Like, you could go through and get all these different types of swords. Mm-hmm. There was the Great Fairy Sword that you could get that too.
Yeah.
It was really cool. You could get different tunics. And anyway, I loved that game. It was great.
Crossovers just ain't the way they used to be.
Amen.
Yeah. No, for sure. I completely agree. It makes me sad that we never got a furtherance of this collaboration between Capcom and Zelda after the Minish Cap.
And the Oracle games.
Oracles came before this.
Oh, you're right. They did.
Yeah. And this was 20 years ago, right? Like, I feel like there was a lot of opportunity there. I wish that Capcom had been given the keys to Zelda on the DS. Honestly,
that would have been better.
Yeah,
yes,
for sure. Let's talk about some of the specific plot elements of the story, starting with characters. Let's go ahead and kick things off with our hero, Link. Mike, I'm going to send it to you first. How do you feel about the Minish Cap's incarnation of Link?
So Link's hard in this game because I feel like he does not have a whole lot of personality himself, which is not different or unstandard.
It's not
for Link.
Yeah.
So I think most of his characterization really in this game comes from Eslo and his interaction with the voiceless Link and kind of, what he kind of seems to be partaking in the conversation. Because I don't feel like there was a much, if any, characterization for Link. It was mostly him reacting to what you were saying.
Yeah.
But I thought that it was a fine Link. I mean, there was enough there to where I enjoyed playing as him, but it was one of those games that, I mean, I know it's kind of like the hallmark of Zelda where I just kind of felt like I was the little dude running around with a weird cap on my head.
Yeah.
I think one point in this Link's favor is that the other characters in the world also interact with him, which isn't always true of Link's. The King, Zelda, the Prime Minister, the Smith, all of them seem to have history with Link that they call back on in their conversations with him. Most of that coming back from like, oh, Link, it's good to see you again. I remember when you and Zelda were traipsing around the castle as youths. And the Smith saying, I know you and the princess have been friends your whole lives, but remember, she's the princess. And like, so you get some coloration of Link's background, especially early in the game, that I think sets the stage a little bit better than you get for a lot of Links. Specifically like Link to the Past Link. He has almost nothing besides his uncle who dies in the...
No, I mean, I think that's a very fair point because you're learning a lot about Link from others as you go. Like I said, mostly I feel like it's Eslo, but you're right. Like everyone seems, and it's kind of one of those small communities, like everyone knows each other.
Exactly, yeah.
And so that's kind of like this game, at the risk of sounding weird, like I feel like it's just a cute game. And so I feel like it's kind of supposed to be that like cool little community where everyone likes Link and he's just awesome and everyone else is awesome. And then Vati had to go screw it up for everybody.
I think that's exactly what it's like. It's we're all friends here to some extent or another. And Link's that little capricious kid that's been running around with Zelda, and even though they're totally different social stratas, like they're just the best of friends, and ain't that just the darndest cool thing ever? Like that's how it feels in a very positive, good way.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with all that. I think another point in this Link's favor is a same thing that I liked about Wind Waker's version of Link, which is that both incarnations have a lot of emphasis on expression, within the character. Like there are animations that are that are kind of pulled off when you're shrinking, for instance, like in cutscenes when Eslo's talking to you. Like there's a suite of expressions that they managed to pull off with this Link, which I think are really impressive and give him some personality. And it's even more impressive when you consider that this is like a very lo-fi character art situation that we're dealing with, right? It's 16-bit, so the tools that you have to play with are not expansive. But I still think that they're successful in what they have. I think that artistically, this is a pretty cool version of Link, right? And I really like the whole, just from a character art perspective, I love the whole Link's cap looking pretty much normal, but also it's just Eslo, right? That's a really cool way to incorporate a companion character into the artwork of Link. I appreciated that a lot. But for the most part, Link is Link, right? I mean, it's very seldom that we have more to say about a Link than just he's a cipher that we were kind of imprinting a lot of ourselves onto.
And we get spoiled in that in the later games. Like Skyward Sword has so much characterization for Link.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom,
100%.
Right? Yeah.
And you get those flashbacks about his interactions. Like you get a lot more of the Link character, and that really kind of starts after this jumping off point.
It's even somewhat present in like Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time to a degree. I mean, I think it really starts in Wind Waker, into Twilight Princess, into Skyward Sword, and like from Skyward Sword on, it just ramps up to actually making Link his own unique character.
Yeah.
Before that, Link was always, like you said, Lyndon, a cipher for us to imprint on that occasionally has some basic characteristics that we're supposed to use as a starting point.
Yeah.
And it's just a change in the design philosophy of the character, which is neither good nor bad, depends on how you view it. And in my opinion, I like it a lot that we're getting more Link as his own person than Link as Cypher. Some people really prefer the Link as Cypher. Just depends.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about our companion character for this game. What are our final thoughts on Eslo? And if you had to say that he is better than one character and worse than another, like who would you put him between?
As far as companion characters or in this game?
Companion characters.
I mean, I like him probably about on par to Tattle.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
He's around the Tattle stratosphere. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're definitely not saying, Navi, King of Red Lions, Midna, Fee. I would personally put Eslo below Fee and above Tattle is sort of where I'm at. Actually, no, I don't think
I'd have to put him below Tattle.
Yeah.
I mean, Tattle, late game Tattle.
Late game Tattle's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think they were going for more emotionality or more of a feel for Eslo. Like he's kind of like the wise old sage that sits on your head, and like he gives you some wisdom and helps point you. But I'm not feeling like oh man, like this is my dude.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough because I've been thinking
that would make him top 6. Actually, that would put him right out.
Well,
of the
and the thing
5.
is, now we're running out of companion characters.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like think about it.
Yeah, which is
he's better than Ciela.
It's definitely better than Ciela. Although you could argue that Linebeck is your companion character for Phantom Hourglass, which I don't know that Eslo's better than Linebeck.
No, Ciela's the companion.
Oh, okay.
character.
Let's say Ciela for Phantom Hourglass. Definitely bottom of the barrel stuff there.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's tough. I mean, companion characters in Zelda games are pretty great.
Yeah, so that's fair.
I think that's the thing. He's good, but he's not great.
Yeah,
And
I would
so
agree with that.
it's kind of the same thing as the rest of the game for me. Is it's above middle tier, but it's not going to go down in my history book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like the grouchiness, right?
Yeah.
I like he's kind of Gandalf-y in a way, you know,
He is pretty Gandalf-y.
He does not have a dissimilar personality from Gandalf the Grey, right? As we meet him in Hobbit and Fellowship. And I like that. I think that's, if you take that context into it, then I want to say performance, that's not the right word, but the portrayal of the character is fun. I really wish that we had just gotten more fuel on the Eslo and Vati fire, right? I think that if we had felt Eslo's betrayal a bit more, if that had had a bit more punch to it, then the plot probably would have, I don't know, it would have been a bit more of a win in my book than it was. But I think we get that cutscene halfway through the game that explains what happened, right?
Like, instead of Vati being just his apprentice, like, oh, I adopted Vati when he was orphaned as a child, and I tried to raise him as my own, and then he betrayed me by blah, blah. Like, yeah, that could have definitely been an emotional punch-up that could have really set him at a higher bar, for sure.
Yeah. Or, give us more cutscenes leading up to that main one where Vati betrays him, right? Like, establish their previous relationship a little bit more. I think that what you lose in that is the surprise reveal that Vati was his apprentice, right? You're revealing that a little bit earlier. But I think the trade-off is that you're getting a bit more investment in their story.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is he got the Anakin treatment where all of a sudden he's bad.
And then for no reason,
he's
bad.
I mean, he doesn't even have another little nice Minish girl. He got pregnant. He was trying to save her with the powers. I mean,
he's just bad.
He's just bad.
Yeah.
And then he just decides, I want to become a beholder, a giant eye. And like, you have all this cosmic power, and you decide to become an eyeball. Like, really?
Infinite cosmic power.
He's like, guys, I can see so much. You have no idea. Could somebody pick up my cup? I'm thirsty, but I can't.
Also, I have no mouth.
Yeah.
Can you splash some whiskey on my eyeball?
That sounds horrible.
Oh, no.
Hey, look, it hurts a lot, but it gets you drunk real fast.
Woo! Yeah. No, I'm not talking about Vati right now, but I think that Eslo is a fun enough and interesting enough character. The design of Minish Eslo is really cool. I wish we'd gotten to see more of that, spend more time with him. I think that he fulfills the function that he needs to without truly excelling, is where I land with it.
I would agree. I think that's a good summation.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the big bad guy of this game, which is not Ganon. It's not Ganondorf.
Do you want to do Zelda first and end with Vati? End on a high note?
Sure. The big bad of this game is Zelda. Let's talk about this game's incarnation of Zelda. I mean, look, I'm getting real tired of saying this. Can we stop turning Zelda to stone and then squirreling her away in a room for the entire game?
Isn't it weird that is like not the first time that's happened? Look, if I had a quarter for every time Zelda got turned into a stone and put in a room for the whole game, I'd have 2 quarters, which is not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
So, yes, but do either of y'all watch Rick and Morty?
Yes, I love Rick and Morty.
I don't know why when I saw this part, I just thought of Mr. Poopy Butthole and like, woo-wee, here I go again, turned into stone. Woo-wee.
I've got nothing for that reference, but it sounds funny. Yeah.
A small subsect's gonna get that and think, haha.
It's so unfortunate because the introduction that we get to this version of Zelda is so charming and fun, right? It's that childhood
Such a great
connection
start.
and like running around Hyrule Town together and going to the carnival, and she gives you your shield and you get an actually very good sense of their friendship, and it's great. And I just wanted more of that, and we didn't get it. It's really a shame. I wish
we didn't even get it at the end. They don't even talk to each other at the end.
Yeah, I know. Zelda does get some fun stuff to do at the very end, right? She gets to be powerful Zelda and set the entire world right with the magical not Triforce.
While wearing her cool hat.
Right,
That's a pretty
exactly.
cool hat.
It is a cool hat. But I don't know. Same thing though, like save the Zelda getting frozen until the midpoint of the game. Like when Vati possesses King Daltus, make it happen then. The impetus for the rest of the story can still be that Vati let all the evil out of the chest that the Picori blade was in, right?
Right.
That's still enough for you to go on your quest and to try and get all the evil monsters back in the box, you know? But I don't know. I think that this is a real missed opportunity, and it makes me happy that this became less and less of a thing the further that we go from this point. Like, obviously, Phantom Hourglass is a prime offender, right? And Twilight Princess honestly didn't do much better. But, we get into our Skyward Swords, right? And Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Like, we get a lot of really good versions of Zelda in the years after this, and it makes me wish that it had happened here. I don't know. Disappointing.
Yeah, perpetually disappointing.
Yeah.
But in that same vein, it's nothing new. Like, it's not a detractor from this game. That's a new detractor. Like, it is almost a theme for a lot of the games.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, her sprite is cool. The few little story bits she gets are cool enough. I like that she is the one at the end to help set things right, and it's not just a Link show. I like that she's the one that has to have the pure heart and do the wishing of the hat.
Yeah.
And set it right. But I would have liked to have seen some more story bits. One thing I thought would be, if she didn't turn to stone in the very beginning, it would have been cool if she was the one who had to infuse your sword with the power each time.
Yeah.
Use her light to, like, each time she's giving you the upgrade. Just something.
Yeah.
I think another fun thing, and something I want to call out is
TIE Fighter.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while. Another thing I want to call out about this game particularly that actually isn't necessarily part of the game is the character art from this game. Like the concept art, the little portraits at the end credits, even the stuff in the stained glass. The art and the character art for this game is mind-blowingly beautiful.
Yeah.
It is great. It is truly some of the best like animated still art that I think I've ever seen. It's amazing. And Zelda's art specifically, she looks so unique and so you can tell as soon as you see it, that's Zelda from Minish Cap. She's got the little circlet. She's got the different kind of dress. She's like kind of Toon Linky, but she's great. I love the character and concept art that is from this game. It's truly amazing.
I don't know that any Zelda game has had better concept art than the Minish Cap.
I don't think so, honestly.
It's really, really impressive, and it's so fun and gorgeous to go look at. It's charming. It's such a good translation of what you're seeing on the screen, right? Yeah. Like when you look at the places that you go in game, and then you go and look at the concept art version of it, it's like, yep, there it is. Cool.
Yep, that's it.
That makes sense. Totally agree, Matt. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our discussion about the big bad of this game, Vati, not Ganon, not Ganondorf.
Oh, thank God.
About dang time.
Yeah,
About dang time. Mike, I'm going to go to you first. How do you feel about Vati at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, I know I liked Vati. So I like that he kind of shows up and he kind of seems like a scampish character at the beginning, right? Like, oh, I'm here to take my sword. And like, obviously he's got some skill. He wins the tourney, right? And then he comes in, he's like, just kidding, I won this tourney for me. And then he does his little, initial kick off the quest line.
Yep.
We get a little bit of background on Vati. I would have liked to have seen, like y'all had said, some maybe some cutscenes about earlier in his apprenticeship with Eslo, where maybe he's like not the monster yet. He's kind of like turning to the dark side. But like, I mean, he's there. You don't see a whole heck of a lot of him until the end. But then his like, I am going to just ultimate cosmic power this be, turn into a giant eyeball. Mm-hmm. The end was fun. I mean, I wouldn't say he's one of the greats. I mean, he's no Girahim as far as like cool factor.
Yeah.
But in terms of like him having his own agency, he doesn't get the Zant treatment.
Yeah.
I think that was fun for me. Honestly, I was kind of expecting to get the Zant treatment with him the whole time because I feel like that's just how it goes. You get introduced to a bad guy and he's not really the bad guy. When it got to the end and it's still Vati, I'm like, good for you, Vati. Like, I'm going to poke your eye.
You stayed the course. Good for you,
I'm going to poke your eyeball to death. I appreciate you.
I am proud of you for sticking it out and not getting superseded by Ganon. Well done.
As I'm slowly shoving the sword into his pupil, like, thank you.
Yeah.
thank you for not being Ganon. Oh my God, I really appreciate you so much.
We needed this.
It's so true though, and I wonder how much of my appreciation for Vati as a character stems 100% from the fact that he's just not Ganon, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that there is more to it than that, right? Gripes about the story and the lack of depth of his motivations and history with Eslo still withstanding, right? But I do think that Vati is a fun enough villain on his own. A lot of that's just down to the design, right? And the goal that he's trying to achieve, right? Makes sense. It's not all that convoluted. It's like, okay, it's simple, but I got it.
Simple still works.
you want to absorb the light force and become a non-benevolent death god. Okay, cool.
All right. Good for you, man.
Yeah.
At least you have a smart goal. It's simple, it's material, it's achievable. Like I don't remember the anagram, but you did it. Good for you.
Yeah. And
Simple,
honestly,
measurable, achievable, realistic, and then timeline is I think the T.
Someone's been to a leadership conference.
Yeah.
More than one.
Hey Matt, how good are you at promoting synergy? Yeah.
Hey, I can say it a lot.
Yeah.
How good at it, that's another question. Look, I can say the buzzwords all day, every day.
Yeah, exactly. I think he does do a lot of big badass bad guy stuff, right? Like possessing the king for the entire back half of the game.
Really cool.
And turning the entire army of Hyrule sort of not necessarily against you, but just sending them on your nefarious quest.
And then blocking you from entrance into the castle.
Yeah, like listening to all their dialogue and stuff. That's all good and fun stuff. Big old badass move in his complete transformation of Hyrule Castle into like an evil version of itself in the blink of an eye.
That was really that was really cool. Just like also somehow changing the entire layout. Did he levitate it into the sky, or did we just go really high up?
So you get out of it, like you can walk out. So it's not in the sky,
right? But like I
think he made it taller. Like we were just like way up there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Was my read on it. And then at the very end of all of it, we said this last week, but final boss fight Vati was a badass.
Really good.
Yeah.
Really good. I think his coolest form was Vati Reborn.
Yeah, the first one.
The first one.
Yeah.
Man, that was cool.
Oh, the one where he looks like a dark wizard?
Yeah.
Oh,
that was
heck yeah.
badass, dude. I was like, damn, that should have been your final form, boo. Why are you going all out at the beginning? And then apparently Vati thinks that the embodiment of evil is a giant red eye and shrouded in shadow, but I guess to each their own. If I were Vati, I would go with Supreme Dark Wizard, basically Gandalf if he had taken the Ring of Power.
Yeah.
That would be my final form, but to each their own.
And his choice so the second iteration of him, which I don't remember what its name is, but where he's the first big eye with
Vati Transformed.
Transformed, yeah. So he's got all those little eyes around him. Like if I was going to be a cosmic being, right? Like just put myself in his eye here. I would not have made all the little crystals I shoot out have goodies for Link in them.
Yes.
Because I honestly was kind of sweating that fight. I went into his second form with 1 fairy and 5 hearts. Because I screwed around too much on first form.
You know what they say, Mike? You don't know a big bad until you've walked a mile in his monocle.
Yes. That was a dad joke.
It was.
That was bad.
I still laughed.
Because you're a fellow dad.
Yeah. Dad sees dad. But no, so that version, I literally just kept myself afloat by avoiding his eye, which does not hurt you when it bumps into you.
Which I thought was good.
Which was great. But I just went and cut all those little crystals up till I had full hearts again. And was like, okay, you're helping me out here, buddy. Like, are you sandbagging for a cool third form? Not really. But I thought the 3 phases were great, and I loved his pause in between where you kind of get to think you won. He's like, JK, you ain't escaping, boy.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, yeah, I did really like that. In some ways, it's just a complete retread of the Ocarina of Time situation, right? Like, you think you killed him, castle's collapsing, got to get out of here. Then it's like, mwahaha, not really dead. Here we go.
Yeah, but we talked about that in Twilight Princess, where we kind of wish we had the escape the castle moment. And while truncated, basically non-existent, we did still get the escape the castle moment, more or less, which I thought was good. Also, I did kind of like that, the final fight takes place in the netherworld theoretically right outside the elemental sanctuary, which is like the portal to the Minish realm where Vati comes from. So he's like trying to stop you from getting into the place where he is no longer powerful. And so like this is his last ditch effort. Like I thought there was some thematic goodness there.
Yeah.
Personally.
And did y'all notice during his fight? I'm sure y'all talked about this on the episode. I didn't watch last episode yet.
That's because it came out today. So.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I did catch up on most. But so where you go into his arm, I guess they're his arms or like his tentacles.
Yeah.
And there's all those eyes floating around. It took me, I didn't even catch it on the first arm, but the eyeball you need to hit is looking like side eye.
It's looking at you. It's the only one that tracks you. As you move around.
Okay. I just saw it was like a side eye and I went after it. But I thought it was kind of cool that they did that characterization. And I loved having to use Minish Link, at least in some form in the final fight. I honestly would have loved if you guys both shrunk down at the very end.
I was going to say the same thing.
And had like a Minish off.
Yeah. I think that it would have been appropriate to have had the finale fight in the Minish realm.
Yeah.
Like, I think I understand why we didn't, because Vati's not as powerful in the Minish realm as he is in the realm of humans, because his whole dark power comes from his fascination of the darkness that is within the human heart, which apparently I guess the Minish don't have. So, like, I guess it makes
good for them.
Except for him, apparently. Yeah. But, like, so I get it kind of thematically that it needs to take place in Hyrule in general, but I think it would have been appropriate to have had it within the Minish realm, which would have been, like you said, Mike, shrink us down to Minish size and Vati and Link go at it. Because in a lot of ways, even in his sprite, Vati is kind of similar to what we think of when we think of Dark Link. He's got the same hat, similar clothes. He's just added a cape. Yeah. It's just he's purple. He's got red eyes and gray skin. So he's of a similar height to Link. He's kind of the same age roughly. Like they're supposedly mirrors of each other in some way. Vati's heart is full of evil and his fascination with the darkness of humanity. Link's is pure and good and courageous. Like they're foils of each other. It would have been fun to have had that final confrontation be within that Minish realm.
Gryffindor versus Slytherin, baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There you go.
Why not? So I think that would have been good, but honestly, I'm not upset at all with the way it transpired. I just think that it's just alternate ways of thinking that it could have gone.
Yeah. Do you hope that we get more Vati in later games?
I like that. I hope Vati's done. I honestly...
Outside of Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures, where he is the bad guy in both of
those.
those.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that, so okay. But, I mean, I guess I'm okay with a second version of Ganondorf, kind of. I would honestly love more one-off villains.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here for the one-offs. Make them cool in their own way. Make them powerful. And don't tie them into Ganon. I know that they have Demise and his whole curse, but it doesn't have to be every time.
Amen.
Yeah.
Agreed completely. I do think it's interesting, the later versions of Vati, which actually were created prior to this version of Vati, he basically transforms from this into an immortal demon. And he's like colloquially known as like the wind demon or something. So it seems like he somehow takes the power of the element of wind and uses that to make himself more or less immortal. Damn, Lyndon, that was a pour.
Lyndon trying to get me.
That is
drunk.
like half a glass worth of tequila. That is impressive.
It's a slow Wednesday night, boys.
You guys got to be careful going into this weekend. We're going to have a lot more of that coming.
Not a lot more of this. I think we already figured out our strategy, right, Mike? We're doing martinis one night and whiskey the next.
Yeah, we're going Fancy Friday and then whiskey Saturday.
You know we're going to a dive bar on Friday.
Well, yeah, after a dive bar, I'm going fancy.
Okay.
I'll have something with gin at the dive bar.
Okay.
Keep it.
Sure. I'm sure they have Irish gin. Sounds like something the Irish would have.
I'm sure they have regular gin.
But it's an Irish bar.
But it's also a bar.
I will ask them if they have Irish gin.
Okay.
How about that?
Anyway, this is a total tangent about my upcoming bachelor party.
I'm so excited.
Me too. Back to Vati. And back to Mike's point. Yes, one-off villains, Zelda series could use a lot more of. Less whatever Phantom Hourglass's villain was, more Vati.
Yeah. Well, I think you're really going to enjoy the Oracle games.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. I played Ages.
That's the one we had. We didn't have seasons.
I played Ages like 20 years ago and remember literally nothing. So I'm excited.
So just to reiterate here, you had the option to have Oracle and Ages on our next game.
Oracle of Ages or Oracle of Seasons.
Yep. And they chose Spirit Tracks.
We did not have the Oracle games on this poll because we're doing them together, and we didn't want to go straight from a top-down game into 2 top-down games back to back.
That's fair.
Yeah. So
Okay.
and also people want us to suffer, and also I think everyone just wants to get Spirit Tracks out of the way. Yeah.
So I mean, pretty much the run of games is and we're not going to talk about this. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. I think that ties up our discussion of Vati. A fun time, right? Fun hangs with Vati.
Yep. Good villain
is where we're at.
Good villain. Well done. Glad it's not Ganon. Glad we didn't get the Zant treatment.
Yep.
All in all, bravo.
Cool. So last character segment, we're going to go around the table real quick, starting with Matt. Who is your ultimate Z targeting of the entire game?
I'm probably gonna give it to Vati. Like, I think I gave it to him last week, but for all the same reasons that I did last week. I think he was a good villain. It's refreshing to see not Ganon. It's refreshing to see a fully realized villain that had his own motivations and really saw his plans through. I think that the way that he went about doing it was really cool. The possessing of King Daltus, the just kind of laying back in the cut, letting you do all the work. And then honestly, the ability that he has to actually game over you by completing the ritual to transfuse the light force into himself. Like, I can't think of a single other time in Zelda history where we have had the option of not saving Zelda. Like, good for him.
I mean, they've had time commitments on quests before, but never that quest.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
like even in Skyward Sword, when Girahim's down there doing his little crazy ritual dance, you cannot fail that. You will always reach him before he succeeds completely. Apparently not so with Vati. So good for Vati.
That was honestly kind of almost fun the first time I missed it.
Yeah.
So I show up and it says game over. I'm like, son of a bee. Like, you got me.
You did it. Good for you, Vati. Good for you, man. You did it.
I'm going to get you. I reload, but good for you.
Mike, how about you?
So I don't feel like there's a whole lot of characters that carry out throughout the whole game that haven't been already really touched on in this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the secret masters throughout the game, which are all, I'm going to guess, like brothers.
The Blade brothers.
Yeah.
Grim Blade, Swift Blade.
Blade.
Yeah.
Ghost Blade.
Yeah. Last week, Josh gave us the little nugget that in other translations, in other territories, these guys have super normal names. Like Swift Blade's name in Germany is Dustin or something.
There's the unknown master that you never find, whose name is just Blade, and he's a vampire slayer. He also is played by Wesley Snipes.
I've been there for it.
Can't believe Wesley Snipes was in this game. Crazy.
But no, so I like that you learn skills throughout the game that are somewhat useful. I mean, some of them are necessary to progress.
Yeah.
Some are just kind of fun and useful. Like, so the down thrust,
super good.
I use that a lot on the dart nuts.
Yeah.
At the end,
Yep.
and it sped up my process. I actually never got Ghost Blades. I realized kind of at the very end that I got the 8 others, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I never went back for Ghost Blade, so I don't know what it was he taught you.
It's the great spin.
I didn't need it.
Yeah.
But just their characterization was super fun. They remind me of like some kind of, I don't know, kind of 80s action hero, like from a Highlander or something.
Yeah.
But so you've got them. They teach you things. You kind of got to seek them out. And then I love the possession.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The non-consensual like taking of your body. Yeah. Exactly.
But it's to teach you things.
Yeah. Exactly.
So no, I thought that was fun. It was kind of a unique thing to this game. And you see enough of it, I think it's a memorable character.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. The one that I'm going to go with is actually kind of a civilization. I really appreciated the Wind Tribe and the whole story around that group of people.
Yeah,
right?
super good.
The split 2-part story of discovering the ruins of where they used to live on the surface and the tease of like this entire civilization ascended to the sky, right? And then late game you get to go see where they ended up, and it's a world that's completely like alien and different from everything that's on the surface. It's got this sort of whimsical quality to it. I appreciated the Wind Tribe. I thought that they were a cool crew, and I would totally live in their wind tower if I didn't have so many questions about its structural viability.
That actually reminds me, Lyndon, one thing we haven't talked about in a long time that we sometimes talk about in these recap episodes is and I guess we touched on it a little bit, but more formally, how do you feel about the character of Hyrule in this game?
I think that this version of Hyrule is charming and endearing, and I really, really like it. Like I said earlier, I don't have quite the same emotional attachment to it that I have in Skyward Sword, right? Which is the promise of like a pre-civilized Hyrule, or Twilight Princess, Breath of the Wild, whatever. All these versions of Hyrule that are like we know that they're, at least from a lore standpoint, even if they don't have the same arrangement, right? Like we have connection to them because the stories are connected to each other, right? I don't know. I think that it's a successfully executed version of Hyrule, and I think it's impressive. I know I said this early in the season, but I still think it's so impressive that even though it looks very tiny, just from a world map standpoint, like how much world they get into that space was really impressive, and the fact that it has such a variety of biomes and locations, and they all feel very different from each other, and they're all distinct mostly from places that we go in other Zelda games. Like, yeah, sure, Lake Hylia is someplace that we go a lot in Zelda, but Mount Crenel, the Castor Wilds, right? The Wind Tribe area, the Royal Valley. These are all places that are unique to the Minish Cap, and I thought that they were good additions. And I would love to see them crop up more in other versions of Zelda, especially the Royal Valley. Like, that's such a cool location. I really wish we could come back to that in another Zelda game. Like,
yeah.
No,
I agree with you, Lyndon, 100%. I would say the best words to describe this version of Hyrule are quaint, kind of like a cozy, or even like high fantasy, just kind of like nice place.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to pick a Zelda civilization to live in, this would probably not be a bad one.
No, not at all.
Because everyone seems pretty friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I can mesh kinstone pieces with people all day long. Like medieval Tinder.
Mm-hmm.
So I just
will you swipe right on my kinstone?
Yeah, I will. Yeah. So there's just a bunch of like kind of fun and nice things going on. The city, like this version of Hyrule Town, I thought was actually pretty baller.
I think this is one of the best Hyrule Castle towns in any Zelda game.
Yeah,
like it's up there.
I think this is the best Hyrule Castle town in a Zelda game.
At least a 2D. I would say best 2D.
It's the only one in 2D. It's the only castle town in 2D.
Well, there you go.
I think it's the best one. I don't think it's the best hub in a Zelda game.
It's the best Hyrule Castle town specifically.
But like, I think it's better than Ocarina's Castle Town. I think it's better than Twilight Princess's. Do we have any others besides those two? Castle Town?
I don't know. I don't like it as much as I like Clock Town in Majora's Mask.
Oh no,
Clock Town is always best.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I think this one was a great version of Castle Town. The people felt like we've talked a lot about this before. Like, does it feel like a real space? And I feel like it 100% feels like a real town. You've got different people, different motivations, fun things to discover throughout the game while in this town, and they keep they keep having you come back here with different abilities, different things open up as the game goes on, which it frustrated me at the very beginning when you trying to go into businesses and they're like, oh, it's shut down. And, I'm kind of like, oh, that stinks. But then as you get more game time in, it's nice to have new things pop up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I thought it was a very livable, fun space. Can I do a quick aside and ask you guys a question?
Sure. Yes.
So like Ferror and all the girls that you find houses for, are they the goddesses? Are they cosplay girls?
They are not. They are, so they're Easter eggs, is for one thing. Those characters are some of the main characters in the Oracle games, which Capcom developed before Minish Cap. And in those games, they are not the goddesses. They are mystical, like supernaturally gifted young women who are named after the goddesses.
Okay.
And in this game, it's in a completely different timeline from those characters. Like the Oracle games take place at like close to the far end of the Downfall timeline. It's like hundreds or thousands of years after this.
Okay.
So I don't think the intention is that they're the same characters. Maybe we can assume that they're being reincarnated or something. But what they are is Easter eggs from two games that Capcom had previously made.
Okay. I think that's a perfectly acceptable explanation. I caught part of the reference, but I didn't know what its impetus was.
Yeah. They are not the goddesses. that are just chilling in Hyrule.
They are goddesses, but not the goddesses.
Not the goddesses, right? No, this version of Hyrule, I think, might not necessarily be my favorite incarnation of Hyrule, but I think that what it manages to do is to be its own unique version, and to bring a lot of fun and interesting things to the table. I think it's a successful version of Hyrule. Nothing to shake a stick at here. Like it accomplishes what it needs to do, and feels like a place that is both your home and that you feel justified in taking time out of your day to save.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that brings us just about to the end of our discussion on the plot. Does anyone have anything else they want to say about that before we move into some other topics?
No.
Cool. All right. Let's go ahead and get into part 2, which is our discussion about the best dungeon in the Minish Cap. Mike, I'm going to send it over to you first. Which dungeon did you enjoy the most?
Oh, so that's hard. Can we do the final dungeon as our pick?
I think yes is the answer. And I think that there's a better case for doing that in this game than there is in a lot of Zelda games. So
I think there were several really strong dungeons. And I'm having a difficult time on this game. There's some games they've had a bunch that stand out really prevalently in my mind. Having played them all a few weeks ago, I've slept since then.
Yeah.
So I can't remember a lot of specifics. The last dungeon of Hyrule Castle was probably my favorite, just in terms of the puzzle, the combat. It's doesn't overstay its welcome, but it really kind of gets you amped up for like, hey, this is the end. Like it feels like it's pushing you toward the climax of the game. And I think it was well done. They don't give you a lot of time. I mean, you can, from the Wind Temple, go and do other stuff, but at least the way I jumped into it, I feel like it's like, let's go, we're in it, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot.
Okay. Perfectly respectable answer. I completely agree with you, just not necessarily in terms of, yes, that's my favorite dungeon, but I think it's such a successful last dungeon of the game. It has so many fun things going for it. Atmosphere, sense of urgency, right? Like there's a lot going on there. The combat's fun. It takes a lot of exploration and some puzzle solving to get through it. It's a really impressive space. So definitely a good pick. Definitely kind of hard to argue with you. How about you, Matt? What were you feeling was the best dungeon in the game?
Yeah, so I was, and still kind of am, stuck between Temple of Droplets and the final dungeon for all the reasons Mike said about the final dungeon and the ones you said. But I also think Temple of Droplets was a really, really strong dungeon, which is kind of surprising given that it falls into a lot of the tropes that we generally speaking don't like, specifically sliding block puzzles. But I think both of those dungeons really had standout moments. The fights, the mechanics, the puzzles, all very good. The kind of switching up of the formula that happened in Temple of Droplets, where you get the big key super early, but then the rest of the dungeon is behind the big key and you have to go through it. You see the boss, you see the element that you want to get. The different way that dungeon flowed was really, really good. I think I'm going to also give it to the final dungeon, though, just because mostly of the reasons Mike said, and I generally have a more fondness of combat heavy dungeons, and I felt like this dungeon, the final one, really walked the line between heavy combat gauntlet and interesting puzzles and walked it really well, on top of having just a great aesthetic and sense of urgency. So I'm going to also give it to final dungeon with honorable mention to Temple of Droplets.
Okay. I am actually going to go to Temple of Droplets for a lot of those reasons, a lot of the subverting of expectations of what we usually expect the flow of a dungeon to be in a Zelda game. I was actually having a hard time going back and forth between Temple of Droplets and the Deepwood Shrine. Deepwood Shrine, I think, is an excellent example of a first dungeon in a game. It is not overly easy. It's not overly short. It was a super fun introduction to the world of the Minish Cap, and it had so many of those things that we were talking about that we liked about the miniaturization of Link, right? Mm-hmm. Deepwood Shrine was really communicating a lot of that and was feeling like a sacred place for a society of miniature people in the middle of a forest, right? Which I really liked. I still think I like the Temple of Droplets better, just because there's kind of a cinematic flow and quality to that dungeon, right? Where it's like you start off the whole experience by thinking it's so cool that you're getting the boss key early, right? Only to find out you've got this whole other set of obstacles that you have to overcome. You spend half of the dungeon just looking the boss right in the face, the frozen boss just coming back into that room over and over again. And I just thought that it was really fun. And the thing that the Temple of Droplets had that others didn't, especially like the Wind Temple. Like the Wind Temple, I think, is a really cool environment, right? And had a lot of fun things going on. But the thing that the Temple of Droplets had is it was not overly linear, right? Like some backtracking was required and encouraged, and it was easy to kind of get lost in there if you weren't paying attention. And I appreciate that, right? My issue with the Wind Temple is still, or the Wind Palace is still that it's like you were kind of on rails through that dungeon. It's like, yes, there were puzzles room to room that took some thinking to figure out, but for the most part, like you were just going from one room to the next, to the next, to the next, and just kind of going up and up and up and up the tower the whole time. And there wasn't much of a reason to be going back down to where you entered the temple or whatever. I think Temple of Droplets kind of like towed that line very effectively. It moved you through the dungeon at a good clip if you were paying attention to stuff and if you were solving things quickly, but it was still like the opportunities for backtracking and going back through past areas once you got the main item were there, which I really do appreciate.
No, and I agree with you on both those points, Lyndon. I do think that the first dungeon was a very strong point in this game because looking to get reeled into a Zelda game, I'm very used to the first dungeon just kind of being a very basic intro. Like, okay, here's kind of how mechanics works. Here's how a dungeon works. And we know that by now, right? And so I liked that there was the ambiance, the introduction to the shrinking, but also I just thought it was a well played first dungeon as well.
Yeah.
It kind of helped draw me into the game and make me want to play more.
Yeah. I do have to say, with the entire game in hindsight now, I think that Minish Cap has got some really fun and excellent dungeons overall. I thought that they were all a pretty good time. To me, if there's any low point, it's probably the Cave of Flames, which, while fun, didn't stand out in any super spectacular way. Yeah,
I agree. I think Temple of Flames is the weakest point. Not saying it's a bad dungeon by any stretch of the imagination. I think overall the other one that wasn't super great was the one in the Castor Wilds, the rundown Temple of Winds. What was it called?
The Wind Ruins.
Wind Ruins. Yeah, like that one also wasn't like amazing. Had a really great boss fight though. The giant Aztec head. So I think those two dungeons kind of fall to the bottom, but the rest of the dungeons I thought were really, really good, really excellent, honestly. So especially for a top-down game, like just they were really hitting on all cylinders for me.
Yep, couldn't agree more. I do think that what Josh said last week feels true. I could have used another main dungeon in this game.
Uno Mas.
Yeah, Uno Mas I think would have been the perfect length. I'll have more thoughts to get into about the length of the game overall when we get into the ranking section and everything. But this team seems very skilled at designing dungeons, and I feel like they had another one in them somewhere in here. So just my opinion.
Agree.
All right, let's get into our next section, part 3, which is best item in the game. This is one that I think is actually going to be kind of difficult for all of us. Like, there's a lot of fun items in the Minish Cap. I'm going to go first and just say that I really like the Gust Jar. Yeah, I mean,
Gust Jar was pretty awesome.
Me too.
It's fun. It's really fun. And it has a lot of utility as well, right? And it gets play throughout basically the whole game, which is impressive in and of itself, given that it's the first dungeon item that you acquire. But just the amount of stuff that the Gust Jar can do, right? Sucking up dust off the ground, sucking enemies into it, and then using them as projectiles, clearing spider webs, pulling mushrooms toward yourself to launch yourself across chasms, using it as a propulsion device to move lily pads around on the water. It's a heckin' versatile item.
Heckin' versatile.
Heckin'.
I agree with you, and I would say the Gust Jar for me as well. We got a lot of good iterations of classic Zelda items. The bow was good.
Yeah.
I found myself using the boomerang and then the magic boomerang quite a bit once I got them. But pre-boomerang to like retrieve items and things, I used the Gust Jar a ton. And I did find it being one of my kind of go-to slotted items during my overworld exploration for a majority of the game.
Yeah, I think the Gust Jar is probably the best unique item to this game. And I really enjoyed the light arrow upgrade to the bow, being able to one-shot almost any enemy in the game, including the blue moblins, was really great, especially in that final dungeon with those stupid spear-wielding moblins that were kind of hard to kill. You just had to sit back and charge it up and blurp. I actually used the light arrows on Vati Reborn for a while because I was dumb, but
doesn't work. Don't try it.
Yeah, just slash him with the sword. It's better. I think there's a lot of good items. The Rock's Cape is an interesting iteration on the Rock's Feather, being able to fly greater distances using the downward thrust attack. Cane of Pachi was interesting, mostly because it wasn't only to flip things upside down.
Mostly because it's goofy as shit.
Yeah, super goofy. You know what? I think it really has to go to the Gust Jar, just being the best unique item that this game created. And so I think we're going to unanimously vote the Gust Jar.
And if you don't have the Gust Jar, you can't get them light arrows.
It's true. You cannot. You have to suck up the ghosty.
That is true.
I mean, this thing can literally suck up ghosts.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like whatever the Ghostbusters used. I don't remember what that little machine is called. But
the
as mentioned by Lyndon.
Shit. The Proton Pack.
Yeah, it's like a Proton Pack, except in Zelda.
I kept wanting to say the Ecto 1. I was like, no, that's the car.
That's the car.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, there you go. It's
Cool.
like the Proton Pack.
Exactly like that. No difference whatsoever.
My question though is, what happens to the things that you suck in, like the ghost? Like, does he just live in your jar
They
now?
disappear forever.
They go into a pocket universe and float around in the netherworld.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be cool if you could suck things into the jar and then put them in a bottle.
That would be kind of cool,
When you
actually.
get the Gust Jar, it actually comes with a manual, and the first item in the manual is do not look directly into the aperture of the Gust Jar. You will go mad.
Always treat a Gust Jar as if it's loaded.
Yeah.
It's the lights from It, Lyndon. What are the lights?
Do not point your Gust Jar at anything
Oh,
you're
the
not willing to
deadlights?
It's the
destroy.
dead lights.
Yeah.
The dead lights live in the Gust Jar. Don't go in there.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and get into part 4, which is the best musical track in the game. Matt, I'm going to go to you first.
Gosh. I think I'm gonna have to give it to Minish Woods.
Okay.
Dude,
Yeah.
Minish Woods was so good. Like, just setting the tone for the whole game so early on of just like excellent, unique music that's whimsical and high fantasy in nature and catchy and fun. Dude, yeah, Minish Woods really like slapped good.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
I was going to say that as well. So I think in lieu of that, I will just go with the overworld theme and then the Hyrule Castle theme. I mean, nothing super crazy stand out, but I feel like it was just pleasant to be in. I will admit that I did the faux pas of having to play a lot of this game on very quiet because I was playing it in bed with ye old wife.
Oh, you didn't headphones the thing?
No, partially because I didn't have headphones for a little while on this. But so I played a lot of it with minimal sound, which I kind of missed out on.
Okay. Well, that's a shame. The sound design in this game is actually really incredible. I mean, a lot of sound bites get reused from big winners like Ocarina of Time, for instance, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, the music in this game was fun and interesting, and I think had a unique quality to it that a lot of Zelda games don't have. I mean, that was kind of one area where it felt like you could tell it was developed by a studio other than first-party Nintendo, right? The music just had a different approach than we're typically accustomed to. Minish Woods was definitely a good call. I know I said early in the season that I really liked the Mount Cornell theme because it's got sort of a really nice 16-bit crunch to it, which I appreciate. But I think my overall winner has got to go to the Vati's Wrath boss fight music.
Ooh, okay.
Which is a really fun and intense sounding musical theme, and it's got some fun echoes of the main Minish Cap motifs kind of woven through it. It was a really great time, and I thought it was a really great boss fight theme. And again, it's nice because it's not Ganon, you're not getting just redos of the Ganon boss fight music. So cool, that's something that I love to see.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Would you mind playing a little snippet of that for us?
Sure. It's a bop.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's really great. That's awesome.
So, yeah, definitely thought that was a really good one. But overall, like I said, musical arrangement in this game, got to give it high marks. It sets a tone, right?
Yeah,
even if
for sure.
Even if it's not always hyper complex, it really sells the tone of this game in conjunction with the aesthetics, right? They work hand in hand.
The soundtrack for this game was high bar.
Yeah. All right, let's get into part 5, which is the best bloopy trail. This one's going to be kind of tough, right? Because so much of this is just like Kinstone stuff, right? But I think it's fair to say that a lot of the discussion can be kind of distilled down into like, well, what are some of the most interesting characters that you fused Kinstones with?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll fuse with you.
There are a couple that stand out in my mind as good bloopy trails. The tracking down all the Blade brothers to learn all your sword skills and getting the light arrows by fusing with the mysterious stranger, going up to the Palace of Winds before you know that it's the Palace of Winds, and then when you revisit it to find the old man healthy again. I'm gonna give it to the light arrows quest because I actually didn't find all the Blade brothers. I thought I did, but I didn't find all of them.
Yeah.
So I can't in good conscience use that one. So I'm gonna give it to healing the old man of his poltergeist and receiving the light arrows, which I thought was just a really cool quest, and also really fun that you get to experience that the Palace of Winds before you even know what it is, and then when you get back, you're like, oh, it's this dude. Cool. I didn't realize. Blah 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 blah. Yeah. That was good. Gabagoo gabagoo. Yeah.
You muppet.
The hand motions are going to be lost in translation to the audio format, but they were very much there.
The little shimmy Matt's doing right now will not be communicable through an audio medium.
So mine's going to be a 2-parter. Not so much for how the quest goes, but I liked meeting the Tingle Bros and getting them just to give me the dang boomerang.
Yep.
It was not a huge blow up, but it was an item that I did use. And it was nice to see Tingle getting another reiteration.
Disagree.
My side quest is going to go to the Ghosty Bros, where you find...
Oh, yeah, the one in the Royal Valley,
Yes.
and then the one that lives in town.
So the one that lives in town, and you're just like, I know I need to do something with you, but what is it? And then you find his brother up there in the graveyard, and he's like, that scamp. He's just so mischievous. And you're like, hey, could you please get your scamp brother to leave me the F alone? And he's like, yeah, okay.
All right.
You fuse with... I haven't fused in decades.
Oh, God.
You fuse with me, I'll get my scamp brother out of the way.
Oh, no.
That's the side quest.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah. I like those two ghosty brothers. They're fun.
I wish I could say it had something to do with the Gorons, because, man, there's such chill bros in this game. Like, hey, bro, I see you're hitting a wall. Like, you want me to hit it too? Like,
yeah,
bro.
man. Let's hit this wall together.
Gore bro, or whatever they call each other. And you're just like, yeah. And then you think you get all of them. Nope.
There's more.
You need more. I never finished that quest for the last bottle.
But wait,
I
there's
didn't
more.
either.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah. No, me neither.
I'm not tracking down the mysterious wall.
Yeah, it was... I was disappointed in myself that I didn't have the fortitude to carry that through to its end, right? Because that empty bottle slot was haunting me through to the end of the game. But also, I finished the game and I didn't need the extra bottle, so whatever. I am gonna go with the Sword Masters. The Blade Brothers. I did collect all of them, the ones that give you Tiger Scrolls and the ones that don't. I think, what did we say? There were 11 total. And they were fun to track down, right? And the stuff that they give you is consequential enough to justify the effort for the most part. That's one of the things that I love when Zelda games give you optional side quests that materially affect your abilities within the game in a pretty major way. I always appreciate that. And so I thought this was one of the better executions on that theme, and they're just fun characters to talk to, right? Like, their personalities are goofy and fun, and they feel like they dropped in out of a kung fu movie, and it's a great time. So yeah, my bloopy trail is definitely going to go to the Blade Brothers. I do just want to say though, talking about Kinstones overall as a general system, now that we're here at the end of the game.
Yes.
It may have worn a little thin the further and further that we got into Minish Cap. But I do still really think that as a vehicle for interacting with a lot of different characters and changing the world in subtle ways through the fusing of kinstones, it's a really great and effective system, and I admire it a lot. I think that some of the ways in which it was used to solve narrative essential puzzles could have been cut out, right? But I think as a core mechanic, it's a good thing.
I think in some ways you're right. I agree we could have used it less as like a main mechanic of the game to solve things or progress, but it did in essence force you to go and talk to a bunch of side characters that I normally would not have probably given much thought, because it really makes you want to seek out every character and see will they fuse with you. And so some characters that did have some fun personality or quirks you would not have necessarily interacted with unless you needed to try and fuse stones with them.
Yeah, I think I agree completely. Like, being a side quest thing is good. I didn't like its use as a main mechanic of like reaching the Wind Palace or unlocking the Castor Wilds or opening the path to Vale Falls. Like, I think if you remove kinstones from those key milestones of the game, I think as a purely side quest mechanic, it's really good. But when they incorporate it as a main mechanic of game progression is when it doesn't work so well, in my opinion.
Yeah, cool. Completely agree. All right. Well, that brings us to the main event, y'all.
I love the main event. Not the chain multimedia conglomerate restaurant /
bowling alley / arcade.
Yeah, don't love that main event. It's kind of dull. Rather go to Pinstacks.
Pinstack is great, but honestly, there are so many good barcades, cidercades, like that sort of thing. I mean,
do your local barcades and cidercades instead of going to main event.
Exactly. Keep them open.
Yeah. Local businesses, baby.
They make better drinks and they probably have better games.
That's totally for sure.
Yeah.
We need to go to that cidercade in downtown McKinney again.
Yeah,
awesome.
I know. You know what? The joystick on their Star Wars Trilogy arcade game has a dead zone, which
that does make it really hard.
Makes it really tough to beat Boba Fett and Darth Vader in those fights where you have to...
the diagonal slash.
Yeah, the diagonal slash.
Man.
It kills you every time. I love that game, though.
Okay, anyway, back to this podcast's main event.
So, Matt, where would you say that Star Wars Trilogy arcade lands in a ranking against all the Zelda games that we've played so far?
Very high. I love that game.
Very high. That's a great game. Okay, this is part 6, which is our final thoughts and ranking.
People still listen to this show on purpose.
Write in to let us know your thoughts about the Star Wars Trilogy arcade game.
Even Mike is shaking his head in disbelief. That means we win. Yes.
We got him.
I'm here for it. And I do love that game, so I can't say anything.
All right. This is our final thoughts and ranking, where we rank the Minish Cap against all the other games that we played in the series so far, see where it ends up, and then justify the reasons that we made that decision. And then after we do that, we'll do the subsection where we rank the final dungeon against all the others. So again, the ranking as it currently stands is... Number 11, The Adventure of Link. Number 10, Phantom Hourglass. Number 9, The Legend of Zelda. Number 8, Twilight Princess. Number 7, A Link to the Past. Number 6, A Link Between Worlds. Number 5, Link's Awakening. Number 4, The Wind Waker. Number 3, Skyward Sword. Number 2, Ocarina of Time. Number 1, Breath of the Wild. We're going to start at the very bottom. If you think that the Minish Cap is better than The Adventure of Link, say aye.
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 Aye. If you think that the Minish Cap is better than Phantom Hourglass, say aye.
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 Yes. If you think that the Minish Cap is better than The Legend of Zelda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If you think that the Minish Cap is better than Twilight Princess, say aye.
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 Aye. If you think that the Minish Cap is better than A Link to the Past, say aye.
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 Aye. If you think that Minish Cap is better than A Link Between Worlds, say aye.
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 Aye. Here it is. If you think that the Minish Cap is better than Link's Awakening, say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
I'm going to give it a nay.
All right, fair enough.
Here's where it lays, and here's where I wipe a little bead of sweat off my brow because it's another day that Link's Awakening gets to enjoy in the top 5. Yeah, and so just to reiterate, final ranking is Minish Cap at number 6 between Link's Awakening and A Link Between Worlds. Let me update my list real quick. So for me, here's what it comes down to. The Minish Cap and Link's Awakening are actually somewhat similar games in a lot of respects.
I would agree with that.
Gives and takes in a lot of ways. They have very similarly styled maps, right? They're both very Metroidvania adjacent kind of maps where you have large sections that are blocked off until you get a certain specific item, and that's how you progress through the overworld. Link's Awakening has more dungeons than Minish Cap. Not all of them are up to even close to the quality of all of Minish Cap's dungeons. I would say in aggregate, Minish Cap probably has better dungeons. Even though Link's Awakening has them in a higher volume. Similar approach to quirky characters. Obviously, Link's Awakening wins on the quirkiness front, right? But like interesting cast of characters, both something that they have going in their favor. And both top-down Zelda games, right? I think to me where Link's Awakening really comes out on top of the Minish Cap is just the depth of the story and the emotional effectiveness of the story. And I think that it's one of those things where if Minish Cap had some of those things we were talking about earlier, where the core tale of Vati's betrayal of Eslo and the way in which it affected Eslo and the emotion behind that had just a bit more depth to it, then maybe Minish Cap would have had a fighting chance of overtaking Link's Awakening. But as it stands, Link's Awakening...
Bless you.
Link's Awakening has got those layers of story and of theme and of emotion that are so effective and so timeless. Like to this day, when you play Link's Awakening, you come away from that game emotionally affected by the story that was just told, and by the character of Marin and the quandary of Link waking up the Windfish but destroying a reality, right? Those are very effective things. And I just think it puts it over the top. I don't know. It's not purely nostalgia, right? Nostalgia does play a big factor for me because Link's Awakening is my baby and I love it very much. But but like I do just think objectively they do so many things similarly well, and they one has some weaknesses that another is strong in, but at the end of the day, it all evens out until you just compare the effectiveness of the stories, and Link's Awakening edges it out.
So because I also gave it a nay, I'm going to say I agree with a lot of those points, Lyndon. I think that this game, I agree that I think this game had overall stronger dungeons, but several fewer dungeons, correct?
Yeah. Link's Awakening has 8 dungeons, 9 if you count the color dungeon. The Windfish's egg doesn't count, but
okay. Yeah. And so here you've got fewer dungeons, while they are strong. I loved the gimmicks are the wrong word, but the different mechanisms introduced in this game. But that's what it came down to for me. Is I feel like overall what it made me feel, how invested I was in the characters of the game and the outcome of the game was overall stronger in. Why am I blanking on the name right now?
Minish Cap?
No, not Minish Cap. The stronger than the other one.
Link's Awakening.
Link's Awakening. Yeah. So stronger than Link's Awakening. And then the ending of the game. So this one, like it was a satisfying end, but I didn't feel like, oh man, like awesome. Like, this is what's happened. I felt more feels in Link's Awakening. And that's really what it comes down to is I feel like I was more emotionally invested. The worlds are similar, kind of quirky, quaint worlds, but the size, the music, and then what it made me feel on Link's Awakening put it over the top.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I feel like as much as I love Minish Cap's music, I do think that Link's Awakening's is superior.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
The only reason that I put an I for that is this game has more, slightly more nostalgia for me, as this is actually the first 2D Zelda game I think I ever beat. And I love the dungeons in this game. I love the art style in this game. I think the Link's Awakening remaster goes a long way towards closing that gap, but the 16-bit art style of Minish Cap is so timeless. The art direction, the feel and vibe of the game in general, it doesn't go all the way into quirky weirdness that Link's Awakening does sometimes. It just stays in that high fantasy, charming, cute, fun zone. But all the points that you made about, the emotional connection, the resolution of at the end of the game, all those things are very true. And I think in good conscience, I wouldn't be able to, for those reasons, actually put Minish Cap over Link's Awakening. But there are things I like about Minish Cap that I like more than Link's Awakening. But I think in hindsight, I would have to agree that it deserves to be just one spot below.
Okay. Fair enough. So just to clarify, we are unanimously now agreeing.
Yes.
On the placement.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Fair enough. Yeah, it's really tough because when you look at where this is landing in our ranking at number 6, it's existing directly on the border of the heavy hitters. Right?
Right.
Like, I feel like Minish Cap is now kind of the line of demarcation between the really good Zelda games and then
the other Zelda games.
With a notable exception being A Link to the Past, depending on your feelings and nostalgic association with that game.
Yes.
Right.
Agree completely.
And also the caveat that we still feel a little bad about where it's at.
Yeah. But for the integrity of the show, we're not going to change it at this point in time.
Right. So, yeah. And I think that is super admirable, right? And the thing that's exciting to me about this list is just looking at it and realizing, like, you know what, that top area is still due for probably a little bit of shakeup, which is exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we've still got Majora's Mask and Tears of the Kingdom coming up, and our Ocarina of Time replay through on Master Mode. Like, that's going to be, those three things have all the opportunity in the world to completely shift our top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know that I have too much more to say about all of that, but just really applaud the Minish Cap for what it was. I think one last point, I said that I would talk a little bit more about the length earlier in the season. We said that we would render a final judgment on, was it short and sweet and just enough, or was it just a little bit too short and we could have used a little bit more? I think that my final verdict on this, and this goes into a little bit of my reasoning behind the ranking as well, I think it does come across at the very end of things as being just a little too short. Not overly so. Like, I really do feel like one more main section would have kind of put it over the top a little bit. But yeah, I just think at some point it does feel a little bit perfunctory. If I wasn't divvying it out week to week like we were, then I probably would have moved through it a little bit quicker than I would have been happy with.
I totally agree. I think that this game is very bingeable in a way that a lot of other Zelda games are not. And bingeability is not necessarily a bad thing. But
I think sometimes in the age of 300-hour open world games, I think can actually be a really good thing.
The fact that I was able to finish my first Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough while keeping up with this game for the pod with no difficulty whatsoever was a huge blessing for me personally. So I have no complaints necessarily, but I agree that I liked this game so much. I would have liked one more dungeon just to spend a little bit more time with it. But that's all. And that's a good thing.
How about you, Mike? At the end of the day, do you feel like Minish Cap was maybe just a little too short?
That's a hard question. It was pretty well paced throughout. I mean, I feel like it did pace itself well, and I never got bored. So I'm curious whether extending it another dungeon would have driven me to that.
Well, that's the hard thing, right? It's like extra length does not necessarily guarantee extra quality.
Right.
And I think that a lot of games are too long. They don't know when to cut.
Exactly.
You know?
And so for that regard, I'm not going to ding it necessarily for being the length that it is, because maybe that was their just, narrative choice of, hey, we don't want to string this along longer than it wants to stay. We don't want it to overstay its welcome. Let's do it.
Can I just say that I'm so proud, so immeasurably proud that we made it as a collective group of 3 people, 3 14-year-old boys at heart, through my comment that extra length doesn't guarantee extra quality. Without a single chuckle, nobody said anything.
We're all grown up. Or maybe it's 11 o'clock and we're tired.
I think both of your wives would disagree with the statement of we're all grown up. So
I feel like they would have data and firm arguments to the contrary. Yeah. Cool. Okay, real quick, let's go ahead and have the discussion about Final Dungeon ranking. Again, the current ranking as it stands is Phantom Hourglass, Temple of the Ocean King, Link's Awakening, The Windfish's Egg. Which honestly, looking at that back now, I feel like Phantom Hourglass probably should have been number 10 just because, like, as much as the Temple of the Ocean King sucks, it is a final dungeon, right?
But it's not. It's not a dungeon.
I guess that's fair.
It's not a dungeon.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, number 9, The Adventure of Link, Great Palace. Yeah. Number 8, Ocarina of Time, Ganon's Castle. Number 7, Twilight Princess, Hyrule Castle. Number 6, The Legend of Zelda, Death Mountain. Number 5, Skyward Sword, Skykeep. Yeah. Number 4, Wind Waker, Ganon's Tower. Number 3, A Link to the Past, Ganon's Tower. Number 2, A Link Between Worlds, Lorule Castle. Number 1, Breath of the Wild, Hyrule Castle.
Sure. I think I would probably slot this above A Link. No, I'm sorry. Just do the normal thing you do.
Do we think that this is better than the Temple of the Ocean King?
Yes.
Do we think that it's better than the Windfish's Egg?
Yes.
Do we think it's better than the Great Palace and the Adventure of Link?
Yes.
Do we think that it's better than Ganon's Castle in Ocarina of Time?
Yes.
Do we think that it's better than Hyrule Castle in Twilight Princess?
Yes.
Do we think it's better than Death Mountain in The Legend of Zelda?
Yes.
Do we think it's better than Skykeep in Skyward Sword?
Yes.
Yes. Do we think that it's better than Ganon's Tower in Wind Waker? Yes, I do.
Yeah, I do.
I'm on the fence with that one, but it'll carry. So,
do we think it's better than Ganon's Tower in A Link to the Past? This is where I think it falls off.
Yeah, I think Link to the Past wins out on this one.
I think that it belongs between A Link to the Past and Wind Waker. Because honestly, Ganon's Tower in A Link to the Past is kind of a very similar dungeon experience to this.
Yeah.
There's just more of it and it's harder, you know?
It's a lot harder.
I agree.
Yeah. I think the final boss of Vati in his 3 phases is elevates it a lot, but we're not comparing final bosses. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Completely agree. Well, y'all, that brings us to the end of the Sacred Realms recap. We've done it again.
We did it again.
We've gotten to the end of a season, and we have rendered judgment upon this game.
Boom. Our ranking is final for all people for all time.
For all time. Everyone agrees. We have the best ranking.
Everyone knows it.
Just ask anyone. Yeah. No,
I don't know these people.
Yeah.
Well, that makes this very awkward.
Who are you?
They've kidnapped me and made me make pod.
We lured him here.
Keep him in a little dungeon and you make him make pod every couple of weeks.
It's honestly, at this point, I'm just happy to see a game climbing as far in the rankings, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's been kind of a slog having stuff land in the bottom third for a little while, you know? So yeah. So it's good to see this land where it did. This episode's been a lot of fun. Obviously, we've got a new game to start playing next week. I'm going to be posting the schedule for that game. It'll be up by the time this episode airs, so you'll be able to go and see what's going to be happening with Spirit Tracks going forward. And yeah, we'll get into that game and we'll see how we feel about it. We'll see if we feel any differently about it than we did Phantom Hourglass. Matt, is there any small portion of your soul that's excited to play Spirit Tracks?
After Dark Knuck's really awesome crossover between Crazy Train and the Spirit Tracks overworld theme, yes.
Okay.
But only because of that.
Okay, cool.
Is that enough? Okay.
It'll do for now.
Look, I'm doing this. This is a commitment. Look, all right, love is a feeling, but it's also a commitment. And I love this pod, and I've committed to this pod, and I will play this game for the pod.
We have the will to carry on. And after that, we've got Oracles, we've got Majora's Mask, we've got Ocarina of Time again, and we have Tears of the Kingdom. So really, what is there to complain about?
It's all uphill after Spirit Tracks, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
hey, it's going to be great.
I also love Jedi Fallen Order and Cyberpunk. I would like to play those again.
Well, you still can.
Shame. We have a copy of Spirit Tracks for you, Mike.
Yay.
Get back in the box.
I am not held against my will. This is not a cry for help.
Anywho, guys, it's been a super fun night. Time to get out of here. It's getting a little late, and we've got some party to do this weekend.
Everyone get rested up. It's going to be fun.
Sounds good. Matt, I will catch you soon. Catch you on Friday. Mike, I will also catch you on Friday. We'll catch you again on the pod at some point during the Spirit Track season. We'll figure out when's the best time to do that. As always, we appreciate you coming on to help us do this whole thing. Rank and recap episodes are always a blast, man.
I'm happy to keep doing them. Even with Spirit Tracks.
Even until the bitter end. And to that point, honestly, with your life and game schedule, after you beat Jedi Survivor, I would heavily advise you to go ahead and just jump into Tears of the Kingdom and start doing that.
I'll add it to my list.
There you
Yay.
go. We all have a list, man. We've all got a backlog.
Got a backlog. You're going to love Tears of the Kingdom. It's so much fun.
All right, y'all. If you enjoyed today's show and you would like a little extra Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms and become a patron. If you've got no rupees, it's not a problem. 5-star Apple Podcast reviews are a great free way to support us. More reviews means that more people see our show. That makes us very happy. Hylians. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sacred Realms Pod for updates on the podcast and for behind the scenes action. Sacred Realms will be back next Wednesday with our initial thoughts on The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. We'd love for you to play along with us and to share your thoughts on our social channels. Spirit Tracks can unfortunately only be played in 2 places that I know of. One is in its original form on the Nintendo DS, which you can also play on a 3DS. And the other is via the Virtual Console on the Wii U. I need to actually get confirmation that Spirit Tracks is playable in that format. I know that Phantom Hourglass was. Regardless, unfortunately, there are very few ways to play that game, and I don't even know if it's easily able to be emulated just because of the dual touchscreen nature of the whole thing. So these are all things to do some research on. Not going to be an easy one to follow along with, and we're sorry about that, but take it up with Nintendo. But in the meantime, may your hearts be full, may your arrows never miss. We'll catch y'all next time. Sacred Realms is an independent, listener-supported podcast, which is produced, edited, and mixed by me, Lyndon Willoughby. Business operations are handled by Matt Willoughby. Our music is generously provided by Darknuck and is available to listen to on Spotify. Finally, we'd like to thank Nintendo for continuing to create such exceptional and innovative experiences.